Okay. Let's convene the regular meeting of the Grosio Police Commission as of 4 on the clock on the wall. And it pretty much synchronized everything else. That's good. Any additions or deletions to the?
Yes, I have an addition. I want to discuss the process to hire the next police chief and vote on a deviation to this.
You want us to add that as a
Action item.
okay, as an action item. Okay. Action item. Adding action item discussion. Discuss the process to hire the next police chief and vote on a DV process. Anyone else have any additions or deletions? Jeff? No. Eric?
Nope.
And I have none.
So move to support the agenda as amended.
Second? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Before we start, I'd like to take the addition of a new person sitting around here, Jessica Hancock. She has replaced Ruth Kalidas, and this is time at this meeting. So, welcome to Jessica. Anyone that doesn't, I think everyone up here we've met her. So, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the November 16 regular police commission meeting.
So moved.
Second, Jeff? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, we'll move right into the action item then.
Monthly, I think? No?
Well, that's in the reports, so the action item's ahead of the reports. Or if we can make it after,
We can
do it after.
follow the agenda.
So it goes wherever we plug it in, sir. What are the reports? Monthly report. Doug.
Before I start the monthly report, I'd like to do a small presentation on Narcan, and then present 3 officers with a life-saving award, and then go into the monthly report, if it's okay with you gentlemen.
I think that's a very important thing to cover here.
I kind of want to explain that first and how it works, and then go into how it was used to save one of our residents on the island here. Are you guys familiar with Narcan? If you guys ever heard of that before, it's a medication used. So if you guys can hear me, this is what our department has right now. All the officers are issued this and have access to this. So this is one of opioid overdose kits. So every officer has this in an opioid emergency. They're going to grab these kits, open it up, and inside you have a CPR breathing device for the mouth for the patient, and it also protects the officer from transmitting back in fluids. A pair of gloves. If you look right here, and then there's how it works. And then in case is 2 4-milligram nasal sprays that open up and you spray one in each nostril, and helps to decrease the effect of the drugs that a person may be overdosing on. Every officer takes these kits, hold up in the reserves, have been trained in this program with how to use these, and administer these to anybody. So with that being said, I'd like to read an award. Dr. Boozer can come up here and bro back. Here's that, and then I'm just gonna hand you this one. I'm gonna read it. All right. Let me do it over here so you can hear me in the microphone. On December 5th, 2021, at approximately 2:01 a.m., dispatcher Jamie Linden received a 911 phone call from a distraught, frantic individual. Dispatcher Linden was able to calmly determine the emergency was for a 27-year-old male who had overdosed on heroin and wasn't breathing. Dispatcher Linden dispatched Officer Robert Piazza, Officer Raymond Boudry, and the Grossville Fire Department to the residence. Upon arrival, Officer Boudry took over CPR from the family members on scene. He cleared the patient's airway of collective fluids that was blocking his ability to breathe and moved him to a recovery position. Officer Boudry administered 2 4-milligram doses of Narcan. The patient showed minimal to no recovery at that time. Officer Piazza provided Officer Boudry with 2 additional Narcan doses. Officer Boudry administered the additional 2 4-milligram doses of Narcan. The patient began to show signs of recovering. Members of the Grossville Fire Department arrived on scene and transported the patient to the hospital. The patient was later released from the hospital with a full recovery. Because of the cooperative efforts of all the above members of the Grossville Police Department, a life of an individual was saved. Acting Lieutenant Doug Carmack and the Grossville Police Commission hereby award a life-saving commendation to Officer Robert Piazza, Officer Raymond Boudry, and Dispatcher Jamie Linden for the professional conduct and the finest tradition of the Grossville Police Department. Sergeant. Good job, Ray.
Fantastic.
What's important about that is we've had overdoses throughout the year on the island. It happens as part of cities. But when Officer Boudry showed up, he was able to recognize that when the family members were doing CPR, the airway was obstructed. The air was not going in. He was purple, turning colors. I interviewed all 4 members of the family, the fire department on scene, and the officers that were on scene. They all said the same thing. That when those officers came in and took over, it changed the direction of the way that life was going. So that he was able to recognize, all the officers recognized the airway was obstructed, cleared of the obstruction, and then able to get air into the system and then issue Narcan. So, good job, Ray. And the other officers, Officer Piazza and Dispatcher Linden. So, on to the monthly report now.
Yes, sir.
We had some vehicle updates. So we had 3 vehicle updates of noteworthiness. 16.7, the one I have marked on the piece of paper there, it sustained some great water damage in that big rainstorm we had about a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you guys remember that giant rainstorm we had, flooded a lot of the island. The engine seized up because of the water that had gotten into the engine, and that car is not going to be evaluated by the insurance company the next day or so. So that may be a total loss on that car. Engine got into the lifters and the pistons and all that, and into the manifold. 16.6 was out of service for a little bit. It's back in service with some modifications to the spotlight. And then our pickup truck, which is unmarked, is out to Herkimer to get some lights put on it, so they can have 3-way interior red and blues on it. So that's about it for the vehicles of noteworthiness for the month. Any questions on that? This is the calls for the month. It's basically the same as last month. It's almost the same as last month. Last month we had 923 calls for the month. This month we had 920. If you look at the general assists for the month, most of the calls are pretty much, volume is the same. We didn't have any large significant events throughout the month that would, for the month of November, that would cause an uptick in the calls for the month. So, any questions on that? Moving on. That's the officer stats for the month. I'm gonna kind of go over it. The stats for November were very similar to the month of October. Only difference is we had fewer verbal warnings for the month of November than October, 10, but the citations were the same, and then we had written more reports for the month. It changes different by the month. With also COVID upticking again, we're buckling down again as a department and trying to keep the officers from getting infected again or getting contagious. So we do currently have one officer that's off on COVID protocols right now. We have 2 additional officers that are off on separate, unrelated medical. So it puts a little bit of a workload on the other officers that are on the team for overtime. That leads us to the overtime. That's why I preloaded that. So here's for the month of November. You're going to see big difference between 2020, November 2020, and November of 2021. It's a pretty significant difference in the amount of hours from 1,500 to 1,600. Big difference in 1 year. That's because we've had all the injuries. We've had people off of medical for various reasons, FMLA, and the amount of overtime that was still continuing due to medical, people being off of medical and COVID.
So this is no surprise to anybody, right? We know the challenges that you guys are facing. Just a question, so I understand this report. When we say total overtime hours beginning November 2020, is that year-to-date or is that fiscal? Do you know if that's fiscal?
I believe that's going to be fiscal. I believe that's April. April, yeah.
We're running roughly 68%, 168%.
I'm gonna pull the budget up. I can show you where the budget is from April for the overtime in a minute. If that's
Do we see that slowing down anytime soon, or, I mean, that's really the question, right? I mean,
we always hope it will, but like we said, we have another officer in the COVID protocol right now, which just caused Sergeant Brozak does the scheduling, which causes he has to work that out and find people to fill in those roles, so that causes overtime. So that was unexpected. We got the notification yesterday. These things happen. It's out of the department for right now, so that's a good thing. But we are also down. That puts us down 3 people now that have actively working, plus the retirements. So
21 has been a lot harder on us than 20, but, you know, COVID was prevalent.
I could just say for tasking on the officers themselves and the dispatchers, it has been because of the amount of hours we've had at work, and then it's also been pretty strenuous on the budget, on the overtime budget. So.
Ready.
And I have the last thing I'm going to go over in the monthly report, and then I'm going to hand it over to Sergeant Brozak, and he's going to take over the rest of what he's is the training report. We didn't have as much this month as last month, but we had the monthly SWAT training that from Officer Benson, and he went over the shotgun, handgun, rifle qualifications in low and no light environment, utilizing various shooting positions, distances, and equipment. And then Officer Carrico's monthly canine training with Atlas, the canine dog. Have you guys all met Atlas yet, the canine? It's an impressive dog. Completed tracking, area searches, obedience, evidence searches, criminal apprehension, along with narcotic detection exercises. So we didn't have as much training in November as we normally have. Any questions on that? So I'm going to turn it over to, I'm sorry, did me have a question?
No, sir.
I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Brozak, and he could do his, finishing up the monthly report, and then we'll go back onto the agenda.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm going to start with the traffic crashes for the month. For the people that are present, can you see that okay? So the numbers are staying, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. The numbers are staying pretty consistent from year to year, going back from 19, 20, 21. For the month, we have 12 total crashes, no hit and runs, 0 private property, 4 personal injuries resulting from traffic crashes, property damage 18, and the one that we're all paying very close attention to are deer. We had 6 deer-related crashes and no citations for the month written due to a crash. Were there any questions pertaining to that? Yeah.
So we thought we were making a little bit of progress year over year on the deer call. I think we had a record call last year. And I know we plan to exceed that this year. Or next year. You think that number, I mean, they're off by 1, I think 24 versus 25?
One.
Yeah, between 21 and 20. I look at the bottom number, 25 so far, and then 24 for the same period last year.
So in 20, the total was 24. And in 19, that was 37.
I saw a big dip between 19 and 20, but 20, 21 pretty much the same.
We're right on track to kind of be in the ballpark.
I guess the real question is, do we or have any update on where we are in securing tags for the call? I know we had a fall hunt for the first time, so that was successful. Now we're looking to get a couple hundred, I think, more tags for the normal deer call season.
Can't answer to when it will start. I know all of the tags and permits have been pulled or are in place. So
All right, no, I
really don't want to talk about
I'm not asking you
numbers.
that question. I'm asking you to get the tags. That's all. And you said you got the tags, so I'm
We
pretty confident.
we do have tags, yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you.
So this is our complaint and arrest record, or complaint and arrest report. Look, we had 2 property crimes, 32 to date. There was 1 MDOP, 1 larceny. Personal crimes, we had an assault and battery, warrant arrest, and then 2 other for 4 total. Total for the year 38. And then our miscellaneous, which were 2 family, 15 other, and 3 identity thefts for a total of 20. Year to date 296. Total complaints that were taken this month, 27. 10 of those were assigned to the Detective Bureau. 6 were cleared, 4 were active, and out of those 27, 7 were cleared by patrol officers. I can't, of course, list every single report, but Detective Vasquez has put together some of the highlights on what has occurred during the month. So the first one was a malicious destruction of property. Grosseto Police Department received notification that there was vandalization at the playscape off of Macomb with graffiti. There were markers and paint used with the graffiti I had mentioned. They reviewed the cameras and they could not find any evidence that could prove who did the damage. So that one was closed. There was a domestic violence. Grosseto Police Department responded to domestic assault between a husband and wife. Officers' investigation found the husband to be the aggressor. Husband was arrested for domestic violence. A warrant recommendation was submitted to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office and it was denied due to the complainant refusing to prosecute. We had a larceny from building. We received a complaint from the general manager of the Grosse Ile Yacht Club. Complaint was against an employee who had stolen various metal objects from the building and the property. The act was caught on the yacht club's security cameras. The suspect was confronted and questioned, and he admitted the guilt. Information was forwarded to the Detective Bureau where a warrant recommendation was processed. That one is pending. And the last one, there was an OWI, or operated while intoxicated. This was a third offense. Department received a complaint of a white Lincoln crossing the toll bridge. Officers caught up to it, stopped that vehicle, found the driver to be intoxicated. Female driver was arrested and processed. Blood draw was obtained, forwarded to MSP for blood alcohol content results. Like I had mentioned, this is a third offense, and there will be a felony warrant requested on that one. Then I'm going to move on to the juvenile report. Only have a couple things to mention here. On November 18th, we received a Child Protective Service notification that there was an allegation of child abuse, male teenage juvenile and his between a male teenage juvenile and his mother. DB contacted CPS, who conducted a school and at-home interview with the family as well as a physical exam performed by a physician. The investigation did not find any injuries or abusive behavior. CPS instituted a safety plan for the family to follow and will handle the completion of the investigation. That status is closed. And the second one on the juvenile report, November 17th, the Detective Bureau was contacted by Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office, which is located in Richmond, Texas. Detective requested assistance in contacting a Grosse Ile male teenage juvenile resident and his family, in contacting a Grosse Ile male teenage juvenile resident and his family, as he was listed as a suspect in an alleged criminal sexual conduct complaint. Contact was made with the family. A report was documented and turned over to the Fort Bend County Detective. That status is closed. And last, the ACO report. As we're all aware, Julie was off for the month of November. I have no numbers, but I can tell you that with her leave of absence, ACO Cordes Redfield, who did an excellent job setting up protocol and procedures while she was off. The shelter ran smoothly, and we are happy to have her back. She returned on December 1st. So she is back, and we are happy to have her back. And she wanted me to pass on. Right now, the shelter has 8 cats, and they've adopted 3 out already this month. No dogs. No, sir. Lastly, FTO, the FTO program, and our new hire, Corey King. I'm happy to announce that he has met and exceeded the criteria for passing the FTO program already. He's being released and on the road tomorrow. And we are very, very happy because that helps us out considerably with, as Doug was talking about, it's not just the overtime, it's the stress on the individuals, the officers and the overtime. So we have him, he's being plugged in, he's gonna be on afternoons. And I can only say good things about him. He came with experience. He was not a hard train. He knows how to handle himself. He acclimated very, very quickly. And all I can say, I can only say good things about him. I'm very happy with him and his and hiring him.
I can say he lives near me, so I've talked to him and he's very happy to be on the department.
He was an excellent hire. Excellent hire.
What is the normal period of time that they ride with another officer to get acclimated? And
It depends on
It does
experience.
depend, but is there like an average, or, I mean, I'm not gonna hold you to it, I'm just kinda trying to get a feel for it.
Well, I can only go off of most of our hires here, they come in with experience. They have the knowledge. They understand police work, they understand the reports, they understand the process of evidence. So you're not having to train from the ground up. With someone that has the experience that he had coming in, a month is about what you need to get them up and running. The biggest thing here is geography, learning the streets, knowing the addresses, how addresses run, and he did fine. He did really, really, really good. Someone with no experience, it could take, some departments have individuals for a year sometimes before they're releasing anybody. And historically here, we've always hired with experience for multiple reasons. We don't have the staffing to have somebody on a FTO program for a year.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay.
Did you say Tommy at the budget, or was, oh, you guys, okay.
Just want to make note also that the monthly report is compiled by multiple people in the department. The dispatchers chip in, the Detective Vasquez does a portion of it, I did a portion of it, and Officer Secretaris does a portion of it. So this is compiled by a lot of different people, and I want to give them credit for that too. So next on this would be the budget report. Mr. Jarecki, did you have some specific questions about, this is updated from the last time I talked, this was updated today at 2 o'clock. I highlighted the overtime because that's the one that's the most concerning. So if you look to the far right, this is the percentage of the budget that's used, 123%. This isn't gonna go until April, so we're over budget on that, we're 23,000 over. But like we said earlier, with all the COVID and medical FMLAs we've had over the year, it's having Officer King starting tomorrow is going to help us out a little bit more. Another person on the road that can.
I keep going back to one thing. So with people leaving, there's buyouts and things like that. And I know that's doesn't figure into the overtime budget, but it figures into the overall budget. And we just got to make sure that everything that can be predicted with at a reasonable level, you know, buyout, things like that, overtime, because now we're doing a call with police officers as opposed to, you know, private citizens and things like that. That whole overtime budget should significantly be increased for that, because you're running, even though we're 123% of budget right now, if I read that right, that you have underlined, we're running at 168% year over year. So that kind of tells me maybe some of that should have been included in the budget. We may not be as far over budget, but that's a discussion between Paul and Ann and whoever the next chief of police is when it comes to budget, and myself as well, probably.
We've had 5 retirements this year, and their payouts or buyouts. I don't know if they paid out on all of them yet, like Chief Harden. I don't know if Officer McLaughlin or Sergeant McLaughlin have been paid out yet either, which will add on to this.
Bottom line's gonna get a lot worse. Yeah.
Doug, I don't think it's not in there yet.
All 5 of them, or just?
She puts them into salaries, and you're right about, we should be at 75% at December 31st
Right.
for salaries. You're only at 79%, so,
You would put it over.
you know, it won't,
Yeah.
it won't, but it doesn't reflect on you guys. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a line item, and that's the township's issue.
And you had asked in overtime earlier, so that's why I want to address that today. So you'd asked it earlier in the meeting. Is there any more questions on the budget? Janice?
Oh, I'm sorry, can I ask
Yeah,
you a question?
go ahead.
Can you just give me the bottom number on the percentage, please? The bottom?
The overall number?
Yes, sir, that's what I'm thinking. Gotcha.
74%.
Thanks.
Any more questions?
No.
That's fine. That's fine. We kind of skipped over the reserve report, so I was going to give that real quick. Captain Wes Price can't make it today, so I'm going to fill in for him on the reserve report. The reserve unit did 60 hours the month of November, and the two events that they worked on were the Thanksgiving Day Turkey Trot. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, on East River in Bellevue there. And then when Lieutenant Pellin came home from the hospital, I believe it was November 27th, the reserve unit all went out to help celebrate his return home. So they took some police cars out there, and it was
They were in the parade.
they were in the parade. It was a very nice day, a nice event to celebrate what Lieutenant Pellin's gone through. It's been a lot for him and his family. So. And then next on number 6, the confidential secretary hiring update. She's right there. She's doing a great job. She's been in the office for a little over a week, and she already caught some things in the overtime sheet that we'd have given you guys new copies of today. The typo, but she had already caught it. So she's quick. I know she doesn't want me talking about it, but she's quick. She's learning very fast, and I'm personally glad that she's in the office because I was doing a lot of those duties, and it helps take away what myself and Sergeant Brozak have been doing for the last month and a half, so, or however long it's been, so. Yeah, very, very happy with that. Number 7, the clerk dispatcher hire. So we had one app, we did interviews about a month ago. We selected an individual to go further in the hiring process for clerk dispatcher. Detective Darzniak was just finishing up the background investigation. Last night, that applicant had emailed Detective Darzniak withdrawing from the process. She did not give a reason why, but now we're back to 0 for dispatcher applicants again. So, unless the commission and eventually the board has a different approach they want to take, we're going to double down after the New Year's, start a whole nother hiring process. We're going to try to expand it more into more social media outlets to get more outreach to younger people and other people. So, any ideas or thoughts on that?
Something I want to say, but I want to wait till we get to number 8. Yeah.
Oh.
Number 7, the police hire Officer King.
Mhm.
We've already done that.
Yes, sir. So if there's any more questions on the dispatcher, we're just starting over. So,
Well, I mean, I think we have to push a little outside the box. Whatever we've been doing, we haven't had a lot of success, and it's a little bit different world now.
this last hire, myself and Sergeant Brozak expanded out past our normal way. We reached out to a lot of police organizations, had those positions posted on different sites, and then we also were on Indeed. We're going to try to hit Indeed this time, the next go around, to expand to more avenues to get the word out that we're hiring versus what we've done in the past. So,
And I know a lot of this is controlled by the union, so on and so forth. And so, things that I may suggest would have to be approved or whatever, but just some ideas, there may be some people that would be more receptive to a part-time dispatcher role than a full-time dispatcher role because benefits don't mean anything to them because they probably use their husband or their spouses or whatever. I think that's something you just have to look at. I mean, I know there's been talk about it in the past.
Actually, they can only do 90 days.
Yeah, I understand the contract. So like I said, there's issues that we'd have to deal with, but I think we should think about them at least out loud, you know, amongst ourselves. It's just sometimes it's easier to get those type of people, and it may be a little bit more work scheduling, but then again, you guys have gotten a lot more efficient at that with your technology, and it may be less of a task. I don't know. You'd have to answer that, but we got to keep pushing ourselves a little bit outside the box. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's a tight market everywhere, especially for public safety. But you know, it's tough in every industry, and hopefully we find some more folks. But in terms of you know, anything really specific that you can do based upon you know, the confines we have to operate right now, I don't really have any great ideas. I don't know if anybody else does to offer.
Well, were you going into the next item?
Yes. Well, it was talked about in the last board meeting, but the potential of another police hire.
At this point, based on the last township board meeting, we got approval to, how was that?
Part of my update, but basically,
Okay, why don't you give us
I'll
your update?
cover that. But one of the things, for example, and you just kind of help me strike a thought, okay? Why wouldn't we consider retired police officers come back and want to work as a dispatcher part-time or something like that? You know, there are folks out there that say, hey, I'm already collecting a pension, I have all my benefits, but I wouldn't mind working, you know, a shift 2 nights a week or whatever. Again, scheduling could be kind of tough, and I know that contractually, we'd have an issue. So just assume we didn't have that issue. Would there be other reasons why something like that wouldn't make sense?
Prior employee or past employee, retired employee.
Could be somebody from Southgate or whatever. Could be a prior
For
employee.
Rosio one, I think they have to be severed from the pension for a year, or there's some kind of language in there, but it's a contractual, pretty hard, steadfast in there about the 90-day thing, but you know, the township can approach the union on that, and that's.
Just assume that wasn't an issue, though. Do you think you'd be able to get good people? I mean, would that be a resource? I mean, can you imagine being retired as a police officer and saying, wow, you know, I got a chance to work a 8-hour shift twice a week. I really like to do that to break things up. I'm getting kind of bored, and make a few bucks.
I also believe that maybe somehow how we advertised in the past for the job, maybe it wasn't updated in what technology in today is, where we posted on the POAM website, the union website. We didn't do that in the past. We don't have access to our Facebook page, but we didn't use social media. They have it, maybe you see it and you can push it on to your friends. We didn't utilize that in the past. This time, we're gonna try to do that more this time to get it out to different niches out there, people that are looking for jobs but maybe they don't read the newspaper or have that stuff. So that's something we're gonna try to expand on this time.
Do you use Indeed?
We did for hiring for the secretary.
I'd recommend it.
We're
I don't
gonna-
know if that falls
we're-
inside the.
We're gonna look into that for sure. We're gonna take anything we've done in the past and try to build on and expand it more to get a greater blanket, if I could say that, to the area. But going back to your part-time statements, that has to be addressed to the union. I can't comment on that right now. I think you understand that, but.
No, okay. But you don't see any other problem? If you wouldn't see any other reason, like, I know the teachers' union, for example, maybe it's just school board's policy where teachers cannot come back after they retire and work, but now they have such a shortage of substitutes, they're bringing them in groves, you know, all over the state. And these folks would be qualified, very qualified, and again, may just be, you know, interested in working a couple days a week. It'd be kind of something to supplement their retirement. Wouldn't take a lot of training. So anyway, it's something to think about. I'm sure it'll come up in the next negotiation.
Might.
So I don't necessarily think we're gonna solve it here, and probably not the
No.
right place to talk about it, but, you know, is there, you know, do we make it a semi-permanent shift instead of the swing shift?
Like a permanent 8, 10, or 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
That's going to be negotiated with the township. I'm not trying to dodge your question.
Yeah, I'm not saying we are, like I
Both
said,
hats, but myself and Sergeant Brozak are in the union, and we're administrators now, so we're wearing both hats. I don't want to trip on any of that stuff, but that would have to be negotiated. It would, I think the swing shifts are a,
it's gonna be a problem, right? Especially, Mike's got some good ideas of, some retired folks, but I don't think they're gonna do a swing.
that's out of our
Yeah, got it.
After the holidays,
Something
I
we may
think
need to look at, right?
something that we need to sit down. A
Agreed.
couple of us sit down with Todd and Doug and
Kevin Counts is our union, the union
No, I know,
president.
but
He'd
first,
right.
with you two,
Okay.
we've hit on a few things here, but let's get some more solid specifics on what we might propose, and then decide how we'd like to approach the union, if in fact
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the wrong
may
problem
not be the
statement.
right spot.
But, Mike's right. We've tried this and we're failing, right? So let's take a deeper look and see if there's something else we need to modify.
I understand.
Just a different industry, but just a little example. I once worked in an area where we had a large office, customer service, and it was an area where there was like less than 1% unemployment. And we had a policy of not hiring part-time people. And when we went to part-time people, we got very qualified people, much more qualified than the full-time people that were applying, and much more excited about going to work. They weren't burnt out. They weren't working 60 hours a week and then asked to work overtime to fill the slots. It can have a real positive, dramatic impact. So all these things that we're talking about, I think we just need to be aware of, and I think, to Paul's point, I think we need to sit down and talk about it, but just want to throw it out there.
I understand. I just
Want to throw it out
We
there.
need to do some homework in between meetings here.
with my position right now, I can't comment or.
No, that's
make it,
fine.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Doug.
Next was the new hire, the board meeting, talk about the next hire or potential hire. That was our next thing on the agenda.
Yeah,
So you
I'm
want,
going to cover that in my
Okay.
liaison update.
all right. Is there anything else?
Um,
Anything more you gentlemen need from me?
No, nice, great job,
Doug,
both you guys. Appreciate it.
motion to approve the monthly report?
Support.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Good work. You guys are running ragged. I know it. With,
Appreciate it.
Short staffing.
Liaison report.
Okay, liaison report. Somewhat of a busy month with the board. So I guess I'll start with the approval of confidential secretary hiring. There was some discussion about that. I know you had some really great candidates, and that was approved. Jessica, congratulations. Welcome aboard. And then next, the police hire update. And so before Brent left or retired, we had a lot of discussion as to what we could do so that if we had budget to hire another officer, we could quickly place that officer, especially in light of the fact that the commission and the management team at the last round of interviews to hire an officer, we found about 3 or 4 candidates that we were really happy with, that I think 3 for sure that we would hire, and that there wouldn't be a need to interview. So we sought approval based upon budget availability to hire the next officer once that budget availability was there. So, and that's defined as, for right now, based upon where we're at today, if the next police chief becomes an internal candidate and that creates an opening, then we have budget to bring a additional officer on to replace, to backfill. Okay, so that is how, that was what was approved at the board. Okay, any questions about that at all? There's obviously, you know, been a lot of discussion about, we think we have budget for another person, or we don't have budget for another person. I think looking at the numbers of where we're at right now, there is, roughly, I think, $90,000, removed from the 21 budget versus the 20 budget. It was not, you know, it was not defined as having to be a head. It could come from anywhere, but the feeling is right now that we're not in good enough shape to bring somebody on unless that individual is replacing someone that's moving up the ranks. So that is the understanding at the board level, what was approved. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So I do have a question on that. So based on that and the timing that we're at, right? So there's 20-some candidates in for the chief, right? That process is moving forward. Like,
Yeah, I'm gonna give you an update on that as well.
well, just before we get to there, right? When do we start the eligibility list for a person? Right? I mean, do we wait for a chief to be selected and then we go find this?
No, we have an eligibility list.
Have the,
So we take the existing eligibility.
Been
list, okay.
approved by the commission as well as management unanimously. We interviewed, I don't know how many people, maybe about 8 or 9, and we selected 3 that we would hire immediately. And so we wouldn't have to go through that process again. We just have to place someone, or, you know, I think we even went as far as to do some background checks and stuff on those 3 individuals, or 2 of them at least.
The next applicant, I'm not gonna use his name, but he's completed the background, medical and psychological.
That person's ready to be placed.
I spoke to him today. He's not making any changes in life and career, but he's aware of what's going on in the situation.
Yeah.
So he's ready to go if needed.
along with what Eric said and your liaison report and Doug's comments on the budget, the scheduling, and the overtime report, I think we have to run through these numbers real tight. I have some questions, Joey, for you that I'd like to pick your brain a little to make sure I'm accurate in what I'm thinking. But also the dispatcher that we're having problems replacing right now. And I don't mean that specific person's job, that's just for some reason we're having troubles with any dispatcher. But was specifically the records clerk at the time, who also fills in the holes in the dispatcher thing. And I think we should look at our numbers and consider holding that that position that we seemingly can't fill real easily, and maybe fill it with an officer that we're ready to hire and that's ready to come on board, which is the next up guy. So I think it's something we should talk about a little more before we, but it's an answer that's quick. We've gone months trying to do the dispatchers, and we've had some success, but this last one seems to be a problem. We ought to see where our numbers are, and would that support hiring this extra officer who's immediately available, I believe. So it's just something I think we need to talk about between now and the next meeting, think about it over the holidays.
Before I get to the main topic, just, there has been a lot of discussion, I think, various people at the board level. And I know that we've talked about this topic before. The bridge, it's open. We know that 6 of the 11 piers were, rehabilitated, fixed. There's 5 that are still out there. I think it's my understanding that there seems to be a lot of general support. I think at least from the commission, that we've learned something from Mr. Smoke about heavy vehicles speeding and going across the bridge. And I think as a department, we need to be proactive in making sure that there's not overloaded vehicles speeding across that bridge. It was just something that I've talked to different individuals about, and I think there's support for. So I think we got to do our part, because when that bridge goes down, it costs Grosseal residents around 16 grand a day, right? And or roughly 6 million a year. And you know, we need to do what we can to be proactive, to make sure that we learn from other folks that own bridges and care for them, and that we do everything we can to minimize the wear and tear on that thing. So heavy vehicles going fast, not a good thing. I'll leave it at that. In terms of the main topic, early in December, I received a note from Supervisor Budney suggesting that they were going to change the hiring process for the next chief of police, that there would be however many candidates, and Manager Derek Thiel would form a committee, interview those candidates, and make a recommendation, have a recommendation, give that recommendation to the commission, and based upon what the commission has done in the past interviews or whatever, the commission would then make a recommendation to the board without interviewing any of the candidates that had applied for the opening. Once the opening for the position was made available to internal candidates and external candidates. There's a lot more around that, but in short, you know, I adamantly opposed that as a board member. Some other board members, the community, I think, strongly supported following, you know, 6710, and how we've done it for practically the last 50 years, over 40 years. And I made a recommendation that I said I would support. I wasn't speaking for the commission, but at least I would support with the commission. That was turned down, and then subsequently, I think there was some more back and forth between the supervisor and various board members. And it was decided that we'd have a study session on the topic on December 13th, prior to the board meeting. And Jim had come up with a new proposal. So this happened relatively quick. The proposal I think that he had in mind was very similar to something that I said that I would consider supporting under certain circumstances personally, and try to communicate and convince the rest of the commission that maybe this is our best alternative based upon where we're at today in the world that we live in. And so we had a study session. A proposal was made that that the committee group formed by Manager Thiel would provide the commission with their 3 best candidates that they interview. I believe there's roughly 20 that have applied, internal and external. And that the commission would interview those candidates, and if they're happy with those candidates or a candidate, then make a recommendation to the board to hire one of them for the next chief of police. If they're not happy with those candidates, then they reserve the right to look further, whether at an existing batch of folks that have applied or whatever. And so knowing that that it's very important, I believe, that that you have management, the commission, as well as the board participate, and agree at least as to who the next police chief should be. It's like when we sit here and we interview for police officers, the commission always invites the management team to participate, and I think we get better candidates because of it. At this level, the board feels very compelled to be engaged, and quite frankly, there has probably been an unprecedented amount of belief on both sides of the fence that you know, the commission's biased or the board is biased. Knowing that is a reality, I think that what I'm proposing is that we go along as a commission with a one-time deviation from 6710, okay? And I'll read it to you here in a little bit. The commission has it, but I'll read it to the group. That we accept this one-time deviation where Derek forms a committee, and they provide us at least 3 candidates, and if we're happy with those candidates, we'll make a recommendation based on that. If we're not, we'll look for additional candidates. In addition, we have invited either Jim Budney, Supervisor Budney, or Treasurer Nadeau to sit on that panel, not both because we don't want more than 7 folks. It's getting to be a lot. But to also partake in those interviews along with Manager Thiel. And so the idea is, unfortunately, we're in a situation where, again, there's a belief of bias on both sides of the fence. I don't, quite frankly, really understand why, but it's a reality. And so this may possibly be the best way to proceed based upon where we are today. It's not a perfect world, but it's one we live in. And I think that if we could get, you know, management comfortable, the commission comfortable, and the board comfortable, that on a one-time basis, that this deviation makes sense. Any questions?
Just to be clear, you stated that of the recommended candidates, whether it be 3, 4, 5, 6, as Jim said in the last board meeting, that the commission would then interview whatever that group is.
Yeah.
And make their selection.
And if we're not happy with the group that they provide us, we can
Okay,
dig
just wanted
deeper.
to clarify.
They're agreeing to that in written format?
They've agreed to it I think verbally, at the board level. It's on video or whatever. I'm gonna read the resolution.
Okay.
And so this is basically what we're agreeing to, I'm suggesting.
Do you have any questions before he reads it?
Yeah. So, okay. For extraordinary reasons, the Police Commission acknowledges and accepts a one-time deviation from Article 1, Chapter 6710 of Township Regulations covering the responsibility of the Police Commission and related parties, whereas 1, Township Manager forms a committee to interview/screen initial candidates for the police chief and forwards a minimum of 3 candidates to the Police Commission for their final consideration. 2, Police Commission's final recommendation for police chief is not limited to the candidates submitted by the Township Managers Committee, and if desired, they can consider other candidates who they believe are more qualified for their recommendation to the board. 3, it is noted that the Police Commission recommends that all candidates' interviews should be conducted in meetings open to the public, but acknowledges that it does not control Township Manager or his committee. 4, it is further noted the Police Commission has invited invites the township manager and either the township supervisor or treasurer to sit on its interview panel and be allowed to participate in questionings of the candidates, provide input as to their ranking, but not participate in the final police commission vote for their recommended candidate. That's what I'm proposing, that we take a vote on that and see what happens.
Do I have support? Jeff, support, so we can discuss it.
Okay. Any questions?
Have comments on what Mike is proposing?
I mean, this seems like the compromise that was discussed at the board meeting to me,
Yeah.
so formalizes it.
Jeff?
I'm fine with it.
Formalizes our understanding of it. So, can we have a motion to?
We have a motion, we have support.
Okay, so, take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. Okay, I'll give you a copy of this, and Jessica, and you can just put this right in the minutes. In fact, I'll send you an electronic copy. I'll get your email address so you don't have to retype it or whatever.
Thought your first meeting was gonna be easy. Joey, you are always welcome.
I didn't know if you wanted to wait till public comment.
Nah, well, it's close anyway.
Joe Porcerelli, retired police chief and township trustee now. Mike, and I apologize if I missed in the resolution, I just have a question. The four-panel board or review process from the township. Now, when they come and they come with their, you said minimum of 3, correct? So my question to you is, and see what you think of this, but if you could ask them, in the vetting process, if this is truly going to be the police commission and part of the police commission's true way that we're going to handle it this time and one-time exception, then I would ask that you ask the group, the 4 who will be vetting, and the best practices that we get from in police work, when the group vets, I would ask, and can you ask Jim this, that they do not number them. And there's reasons for not numbering the individuals that you guys, because Eric, you're on the board, or you're on the process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You're saying numbers as far as like first, second, third?
Correct.
Okay.
So what happens is the true way to vet and the true way to bring it to this board, so this board then will give their recommendation, is that they would give, and you said 3 or say, what, minimum 3?
I think we prefer 4, maybe.
How
5,
many
but
ever,
It's however many.
if they're tight, but.
however you do it,
Yeah,
however you do it.
minimum of 3.
Can you ask Jim, though, that it not be numbered? Because numbering it isn't the correct way to vet and bring it down under the best practices, okay, of the, we have different things that we go to from the Department of
So
Justice.
Joey, said another way, you're saying that when they make the cut, whether it's 3, 4, 5, or 6, that it just be a hurdle that these made it, these didn't.
Correct, because it's your job then to make the numbers, not their job to make the numbers. There's a reason for that. I don't want to get into it. Mike, there's some things that you said previous, but I don't want to get into it. But if they number it, then what it does is it can tie your hands in the end of making your decision. If they do not number it, it's your job then to come into it, number it, and bring it back to the recommendation to the township board to vote on. That would be how this is applied. That would be how 6710 is applied correctly then. Or how about this? This is in my experience as a police chief under the best practices of vetting, hiring, and so on and so forth. So you understand where I'm going with that at least.
Joey, just so you know, in the process where we filled Jessica, we picked Jessica, there were a group of about 9, I think. And when we went and we ended up, we figured it'd be 2 or 3, it ended up being 4. But we did not force rank those 4 for the second sets of interviews. These were just the 4 people that made it to the next step.
Right,
And and then at that step, we selected the first, second, third.
okay. But Mike, since you have this and you're the point person on, do you feel that would you
Well,
want to recommend or ask that?
I could say we could request it. I think it kind of makes sense. It may flow better if we just don't know. And then that way we don't have a natural bias or unbiased, especially if we're being accused of being biased.
But
So
there are
it'd be better if they weren't numbered. I won't hold this up. This is
My
what we,
experience through all the hirings, that's kind of the way it is. But
That's generally the
You're gonna be
practice.
our
Right.
representative.
that's
But
the
it was
practice.
told at the township board level that they would be ranked. And all I'm asking you, do you feel it's appropriate for you to ask that to Jim and not to just go to Derek or anybody on the
Yeah,
committee, I get that.
Derek, you're gonna be on the committee. Our preference, I think, at this level,
Unranked.
yeah,
Yeah.
that takes the
They
bias
just
out
made
of
the
it
hurdle.
completely.
Yeah.
This
right?
is part of my,
Made the cut.
Because that's the reason why a big reason why we're doing this, right? We want everybody to say, look, it was totally unbiased, everybody, you gave us 3 great candidates,
and
at
that's,
least 3. Management's gonna sit on our panel, along with, we've invited either Dave or Jim. It's up to them if they wanna participate, some more board. Yeah, I'm good with that. Typically, that's how
That
it
makes
works,
sense to you.
But I'm not gonna stop this process. This is what we voted on.
no, I'm only
so-
asking you, Mike, you're
Oh,
the
it makes
point
sense.
person to ask them because it was stated at the board level. I just want to let you know this. It was stated at the board level that they would be ranking and sending it back to the police commission. And that's not what the best practices have for you. That's all I'm saying, because there's reasons for that. Again, I could be here for another 20 minutes, and I don't want to waste any more of your time. So if you think that's appropriate, Mike, could you ask?
Yes.
Do you feel that's appropriate? That's all.
I do feel it's.
Or as a board, do you
I think
feel
it
it's
would be better, it'd be a better process.
Okay, thanks.
Given the circumstances.
I just want to
Further,
bring it
I
up.
think it is kind of an accepted practice across industry.
Well, it's accepted, but that's not what was
Shouldn't be a
stated. This is the
problem.
reason why I'm asking you, because it was stated otherwise from
Yep,
them.
I understand.
All right, thanks, Paul, for letting
Aren't
me.
you glad you're on the township board?
I'll talk to you later on that,
Yeah, you don't have to answer that, Joe.
yeah. Oh, I plead the 5th, 6th, and 7th. Thanks.
That's why you're always welcome to speak here, Joe.
It's a good point. I didn't really think about it, but I think you're right. So I certainly support that. But again, we're not gonna hold this up for that reason if they don't agree.
Okay,
right.
Mike, do
That's
you
the
have
end of my
anything
update.
else?
That is the end of my update, yeah.
We were doing fine until you started talking. Okay. No, don't. All right. I think we did the action item one, which was added. We did the department updates. Okay, public comment. Okay. So,
Tom Snyder, 8448 Rucker. Quick question. As we're coming on to the Wayne County Bridge, it used to be that the people that wanted to go on West River would get in the right-hand lane to go ahead and turn. But right now, it's a solid white line. Is the expectation that white line is going to go away, or do you want us to turn from the left lane to get into the West River turnoff?
I'm not sure if the county's done marking that section yet. I
Okay.
can't
Well,
answer
right
it,
now,
but
it's a solid white line.
I'm gonna have to look at it and
Okay.
look at the answer to that, but I can get
third,
back to
Tom,
you.
is that means you shouldn't cross it.
Correct. So technically, if I'm crossing that white line, I could get a ticket if I'm getting over in that white lane in order to turn. And I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And
You're
my
saying-
guess is if I'm going to do it, somebody else is going to do it too. So if we could look at that.
That striping is county responsibility, Doug?
I believe so. You're saying when you come on the bridge, you want to get into the right turn lane to get into the
Right,
ramp?
what was the right turn lane?
There's a
But where
solid
the
white
white
line.
line is
Okay.
right now, it can't be a turn lane. So I guess I'm asking that question.
Go and look at that myself, and we'll try to get a hold of the county.
Okay, so the other question I have is, there's been a lot of Facebook stuff going out about the bridge not being safe, piers and that kind of stuff. Does this commission have any comments about any of that stuff? I mean, it's,
From the last township board meeting, that Supervisor Budney was very clear
Okay,
that rumors to that effect, there is no problem with the bridge. So we don't have anything to add to what the supervisor said.
all right, I wasn't sure with the police department, public safety, if there was anything to add as far as that.
Unless I'm wrong,
I don't, no, I believe the bridge is safe. The thing that has been questioned in the past, is how long it is gonna be in a state where major repairs are not required. Is it gonna last, 20, 30 years? Is it gonna last 10 or 5? Because there are 5 piers that were identified in an inspection report, I think November of 2020, to be somewhere between fair and poor condition, is my understanding, is what I've read. And so there will be a plan at some point. There's been commitments to a plan to repair those newer of the 11 piers that are seated in bedrock, which is, a much better situation than the 6 that got repaired. So our belief is that it's safe. It's just, and by the way, it'll be inspected on a regular basis by MDOT. And so, as a board, and this, not as a commission, but as a board, we've approved a plan to go out and find an engineering company and hire an engineer. It'll still have to be approved based on the amount of money by the board, but to hire an engineer to review those inspection plans and provide advise the township. Until we do that, then all we know is what Wayne County tells us, basically.
Okay, thank you.
couple more faces out in the audience.
My name's Kevin Flavin. I Park Lane, Grosville, Michigan. I have some questions and follow-up for the commission, asking you to, or providing the opportunity to help taxpayers better understand what's going on. Supervisor Budney stated at the December 13th Township Board meeting that there are 2 reasons that he does not want to follow the hiring process for Grosville Police Chief that have been followed approximately for the last 45 years or so, which is authorized by Township Ordinance 6710. First, Supervisor Budney claimed the Police Commission had real trouble meeting the Open Meetings Act. Second, Supervisor Budney claimed that some unnamed people believe that the Police Commission is biased towards one applicant. Specifically, does any member of the Police Commission agree with Supervisor Budney that the Police Commission is not willing to strictly comply with the Open Meetings Act? Also, does any member of the Police Commission believe that this body has demonstrated bias toward a single applicant for the police chief? Was the previous recommendation by the Police Commission to hire Lieutenant Kenneth Pelland for Grosville Police Chief biased on any factor other than, or based on any other factor other than merit, performance, facts, and the best long-term interest of Grosville? Question number 2, Supervisor Budney has publicly stated that the committee is not going to comply with Michigan Open Meetings Act by reviewing and interviewing the candidates during public meetings. It's my understanding that the Police Commission intends to hold its reviews and interviews of applicants during open meetings, during open public meetings. Can any commissioner explain why it serves the public interest, or why it doesn't serve the public interest to have open meetings for transparency and accountability, which would be better? Supervisor Budney's committee is supposedly going to meet in private while the police commission meets in public to perform reviews and interviews for the applicants. So why can Supervisor Budney's committee meet in private and not follow the Open Meetings Act? It was also mentioned that up to 20 resumes and applications have been received for the Grosseal Police Chief position. Do members of the Police Commission have the ability and time to read up to 20 resumes and narrow the field of candidates to the strongest ones for interviewing? In your professional work outside the Police Commission or volunteer work for the Police Commission, do members of the Police Commission have experience narrowing candidates for a job search to a select few? And finally, can any commission, or based on your answers to my questions, I still do not understand the rationale for Supervisor Budney unilaterally changing the township decades-long practice of following Ordinance 6710, which provides for the Police Commission with the primary responsibility of making the recommendation on hiring the Grosseal Police Department Chief to the Township Board. Are any members of the Police Commission troubled by the fact that Supervisor Budney is unilaterally changing the township practice of following Ordinance 6710 without a vote of the Township Board? Isn't there a danger that allowing Supervisor Budney to unilaterally, without a vote of the Township Board, change the township vetting practice of following Ordinance 6710, establish a precedent that he can take the same type of action with any township ordinance at any time for any reason?
We won't go any farther if you can't tell me how many questions you just asked. 10 or 12 there. So,
Take them one at a time.
and as Joey will tell you, we don't stand on ceremony here as tight as they do at the township board meetings, mainly because we have more time and we don't have as much of an agenda to get through as the township board does. And so we're always welcoming of anyone that wants to come forward and give us questions. I'll take a shot in general here. You guys are welcome to comment after I'm through. But in general, all your questions about what either the township supervisor or the board, you know, said at their last meeting, and did they mean this, that, or the other thing, we can't, or I can't answer that because I'm not them. Those kind of questions need to be directed at the people that you are really questioning here. So, you know, anything I said about what Commissioner or Supervisor Budney said, or any of the other trustees, I mean, that'd be one man's opinion. So, and I have no way of knowing, and the residents will have to draw the inferences on their own for whatever motivations that you were asking about. Those kind of questions need to be directed towards the specific individual that said them. So, the other things about whether this commission is competent enough to interview a number of candidates, however big, I believe everyone sitting up here has handled situations like that many times in their careers. But so have the people down at the, or the, not down, it's here, at the township board level. So, although I might have one or two bones of contention about if I would have done certain things certain ways, you know, the township board also has a situation where they've got to try and run this township. They've made their decision. We've expressed somewhat vehemently in the past what our feelings were, And now, through the process, we've worked down to what Mike's proposal was today, that we took action on. So, a lot of your questions are totally great questions, and they're valid questions, but they're not ones that I'm ready to answer as the representative of this commission, because, you know, I wasn't responsible for them, and I didn't make the decisions, so you need to talk to those people. And the public has a right to ask every question you just asked. But unfortunately, I can't speak for our commission and answer any of your questions, other than the fact that we're totally qualified to handle anything like this. This commission has done it many times in the past over the last 30 years that I've been on it. So, anyway, you know, I welcome your questions. I hope you get the answers, but they need to be directed towards the proper people. Does anyone else want to take a shot at Mr. Flavin's?
I think the only other questions we didn't address were the Open Meetings Act. I mean, we follow Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, I think
I
you're
don't-
right,
I don't-
thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any instance where we've not followed Open Meetings Act. We do it's very difficult to always follow that with timing of publications and everything else, but we do take very good care in following the Open Meetings Act.
Well, the accusation was made by Supervisor Budney that, and actually a couple other, I think Mr. Bletcher, Ms. O'Connor, they also were upset that, or said that the Open Meetings Act wasn't followed. And so I'm just offering an opportunity for.
Comments have been made, but at this point, I'd like to assume, even though it still gets brought up, that we've gotten by that, and that the review of the specifics of each of those situations up to the township attorney level. And if you notice at that last board meeting, he also requested that people should be careful on making those types of statements about it. So I support whatever the township attorney said. And I support what Eric said. You know, we have made every effort to follow the OMA.
And I
our
appreciate
knowledge
that.
have never knowingly violated it for any
I
reason.
appreciate that.
But I think also, you know, I've said it before, in all of our meetings, we've allowed anybody to be there generally, and anybody to ask any questions they want. Anyone else have any comments on Mr. Flavin's public comment? Mike?
I would just say one thing in short. You know, I started off my recommendation for extraordinary reasons, extraordinary reasons. And I think we're in a situation where we do have extraordinary reasons to deviate one time from this process. And the reason why I recommended this deviation, because more important to me than 6710 or any other ordinance that we have on Groseal is getting the best possible candidate for chief of police long-term for Groseal. Now, if this commission's had any bias, I think they've held to that principle adamantly. That's the only bias we've had. The best possible candidate based on probably the 100 years of experience in hiring senior leaders for companies. And that's what we're biased. If we're biased, that's how we're biased. And I admit to being biased that way. So I am looking for the best possible candidate to be the next chief of police for Groseal. And I believe, based upon the accusations of bias on both sides of the fence, that this process that we proposed and agreed to make, that is a deviation, puts us in the best possible position based on the board that we have today, the commission we have today, the management team that we have today, to achieve that goal. If we ramrodded somebody through and management wasn't involved with it, the board didn't have an invitation to sit there and question next to the commission, we may have a lesser chance to get the best possible person. I have no favorite. I really don't. We had a great candidate that we've recommended. Unfortunately, we never had a vote on it. That still may be the best candidate. But if Derek Groups provides and interviews a candidate that I believe can do a better job long-term for Groseal, then I'll vote for that person. And I'll recommend that person. And hopefully, there's no pride in authorship. It could be their candidate, it could be one that, started with the commission. It could be somebody that, I don't even know. But if it is the best candidate, I will work very hard, whoever that is, for the commission's recommendation. Again, no pride in authorship, wherever that candidate comes from, for that person to be our recommendation. That's the only bias that we have. Bias to that principle. One of the principles that we campaigned on, doing what is in the best long-term interest for Groseal. That will be our bias, I believe.
And I think our performance as a commission for the last 30 years, not everyone has been on the commission that long. I have. So I'm speaking from that experience. We followed the process and the precedent that Mike has just talked about in always selecting who we thought was the best person. We did that when we selected Chief Barron. We did that when we selected Chief Porcerelli. And I think the performance of the police department and all of its officers and other employees over that time have been exemplary, and it's proven itself that the process works by fact of how many times this department and this community has been voted the safest in wherever they're counting.
I absolutely agree with that, and I think the commission has done a fine job doing what their, the ordinance says they are to do. And my point of view is there is an ordinance, a law, a regulation, a statute that tells you what the process is. And what I'm further saying is that the board, Mr. Budney and his 4 votes, they are not following 6710. They are not following the process that was so successfully followed for approximately 50 years. I don't think Chief Barron or Chief Warnick, I don't think that the board followed that process. And every time that we deviate from a process or a law or a rule or a regulation, it creates a precedence. And by deviating, it also, and not following the ordinance, the township opens itself up for litigation that can be terribly expensive. And somebody who is not, somebody can say, you did not follow Mr. Budney, Ms. O'Connor, Mr. Bletcher, Mr. Nadu. You didn't follow the process. You didn't vote to change the process. Therefore, what you've done is not
And the
legal.
position of the people on this commission
Right.
is on the public record.
So what I'm saying,
The
is,
questions
you
you're
voted
asking
tonight.
need to be stated towards the people that you're talking
Right,
about there.
but
and
tonight
that
you
needs to be
voted- you
done
voted
wherever you choose
board-
and
this
find the
board-
forum.
This board voted not to follow 6710. And so you voted to do that, but the board, the township board has not taken a vote to change that. So is your vote, if they haven't changed it, I think that will that nullify
I
what
guess
you do?
all I can say to that subject is the way that Mike presented it is the way that we voted it.
Right.
And that's the record.
Well,
and we'll stand on that record.
I appreciate that, and I'm not criticizing the board. What I'm saying is that there's a process to be followed. It's not being followed by the township board, and I think it puts everybody in a difficult position. And I will be happy to put these questions online so that anybody that wants to add to them and respond to them from the board and can better understand them too. Thank you.
Okay, sir, you've been here all meeting. Did you have any comment?
No, sir, thank you.
Because we'd like to give everyone an opportunity. Joey? Well, I mean, I know you already had one say, but you always get a second one if you want it.
No, good, thank you.
Okay. Doug, any closing comments? Todd?
Sir.
And Jessica, what do you think of your first opportunity to see this well-oiled machine in action?
Well, I found it interesting, actually.
See, you thought, well, enough said. I'm glad you're here. We need your help. We were terrible at taking minutes, so we'll take all the help you can give us. All right, I guess I'm looking for a
I'll
motion
make a
to
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Mike, you can turn it off. And say, why did, so there's
Thank you for